It begins with an empire that ruled the sea before Europe learned to rule land. Long before Rome imagined legions or Greece refined hoplite warfare, a maritime civilization quietly shaped the Mediterranean. Their power did not come from occupying territory, but from mastering movement. Ships replaced armies. Routes replaced borders. The sea became their highway, marketplace, and shield. While others fought endlessly over fields and walls, they focused on currents, winds, and harbors. Control flowed with trade rather than fear. Their dominance was subtle, almost invisible, yet undeniable. This was not an empire you could point to on a map easily. It existed wherever their ships sailed, and for centuries, the sea answered only to them. The Minoans did not conquer by force, they connected the world by water. From their base on Crete, their fleets reached outward like veins carrying lifeblood across the Aegean. Egypt, Anatolia, mainland Greece, and scattered islands all became part of their network. Goods moved freely, but so did ideas, techniques, and culture. Harbors mattered more than fortresses. Influence came through reliability, not intimidation. Their power was economic and logistical rather than territorial. Dependence replaced domination. Other societies adjusted their lives around Minoan routes. The sea became a shared system, quietly controlled by one civilization that rarely needed to announce itself. Strangely, their cities lacked massive defensive walls. This was not an oversight or weakness, it was confidence shaped by experience. Their navy discouraged threats long before enemies could land. The sea acted as an early warning system and a defensive barrier. Attacks were unlikely when ships could intercept danger far from shore. Later civilizations would surround themselves with stone, but the Minoans trusted water more than walls. Their cities opened outward instead of closing in. This absence of fortifications shocked archaeologists centuries later. It suggested a society that felt secure, protected, and unchallenged. For a long time, that belief proved correct. The Minoans ruled through commerce rather than conquest. Their ships carried metals, pottery, textiles, and luxury goods across vast distances. Trade built relationships that armies could not. Violence was unnecessary where dependence existed. Other regions relied on Minoan access to survive economically. Influence spread quietly through exchange. Cultural elements traveled alongside cargo, shaping art and technology across the region. Power felt natural rather than imposed. This made their empire efficient, prosperous, and respected. But it also meant control depended on constant movement. When trade flows, power exists. When trade stops, power has nothing to stand on. At their height, the Minoans believed their dominance was permanent. Palaces expanded in size and complexity, filled with color, light, and openness. Art celebrated life, movement, animals, and the sea rather than war or conquest. There was little obsession with enemies. Defense did not dominate imagination. Prosperity created confidence, and confidence slowly became complacency. The empire looked outward toward trade rather than inward toward resilience. No great preparations were made for disaster. The sea had always protected them. The system had always worked. Few questioned what would happen if it stopped working. Without warning, nature became their greatest enemy. A massive volcanic eruption on the island of Thera shattered the balance the Minoans depended on. Ash darkened the skies and poisoned the air. Shockwaves tore across the sea. Tsunamis smashed into ports and coastal cities, destroying harbors in moments. Ships, the core of their power, were destroyed before they could respond. Trade routes collapsed instantly. Communication failed. The sea that once guaranteed safety delivered devastation. Control vanished faster than leaders could react. The empire was crippled without facing an enemy army. Nature achieved what rivals never could. After the disaster, the sea that once carried power carried only silence. Harbors that had connected the Minoan world now lay shattered and unusable. Ships that survived the waves drifted without purpose, unable to dock or trade. Trade routes that once pulsed like arteries went empty overnight. Cities waited for supplies that never arrived. Markets fell quiet. Communication collapsed as messengers failed to cross broken waters. Leadership faced a crisis no experience had prepared them for. An empire built on constant movement suddenly stood still. Power that depended on flow had nowhere to go. Confidence turned into confusion, and confusion into fear. The sea no longer obeyed them. It ignored their need entirely. For the first time, the Minoans stood exposed to a world they had never prepared for. Their cities, once proudly open and unwalled, now felt defenseless. The navy that had protected them was damaged, scattered, or destroyed. There was no second layer of protection to fall back on, no inland fortresses, no armies trained for land war. Authority had always lived at the coast, and now the coast was broken. Local leaders struggled to maintain order as resources grew scarce. Unity weakened under pressure. What once felt permanent now felt fragile. The realization came too late. Dominance without redundancy is temporary. Their strength had no backup when the sea failed. The Minoan Empire did not fall in battle. It was replaced in weakness. As their influence faded, other powers noticed the absence. The Mycenaeans did not arrive to defeat a great rival. They arrived to fill an empty space. Palaces were entered, not stormed. Systems were taken over rather than destroyed. Control shifted quietly, almost politely. Resistance was minimal because power had already drained away. History often celebrates conquerors, but this was not conquest. It was succession without ceremony. No final stand marked the end. The empire had vanished before anyone officially ended it. Collapse did the work silently. Without a dramatic ending, memory had nothing to cling to. There was no last battle to retell. No burning capital to symbolize collapse. Trade stopped gradually. Culture fragmented into local echoes. Cities emptied over time rather than all at once. What once ruled the sea became scattered ruins and broken art. Later civilizations remembered fragments, frescoes, myths, symbols, but not the system behind them. History favors fire, blood, and noise. The Minoans left silence. Their disappearance blended into time instead of standing out against it. Europe's first sea empire faded without demanding to be remembered. The Minoans left a warning, written not in stone, but in absence. Power built on movement must prepare for stillness. Empires dependent on trade rely on forces they do not command. Nature does not negotiate and does not announce its intentions. The sea that grants dominance can remove it without permission. Europe's earliest empire did not fall to enemies, rebellion, or betrayal. It vanished because its strength had no alternative when the world shifted. The sea ruled them in the end, as it always had. And history, shaped by noise rather than silence, barely noticed the moment they disappeared. Do you think the Minoan Empire was undone more by nature than by rivals? Can any empire truly control the forces it depends on for power? Share your thoughts and theories in the comments below. Explore more lost empires that vanished without warning or war.